Test. Oh, that's good. Good. Hey there. How you doing?
Well, I have some kind of bug, but I'm here.
All right.
Yeah.
Welcome. You're the first
Yeah,
one to enter the room. Great.
I am. I am. I'm going to take a little moment here. I'm
Yeah,
going to mute and go off video, but I just want to say hi.
hi.
Am I still the only one in here
I'm here also. It's two of
besides you?
us. I got him. My guest sent me a message. He's on his way. He had to restart his computer. He's got the link. He's all ready to go. He's prepared.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Sorry, I'm a little out of it right now because I have the illegal like cold. Oh my God. I have a cold. Oh my God. Better call the cops.
You seem fine.
I know. I'm fine. But
Right on. Yeah, I'm very excited about this show. I'm always excited.
oh, cool. I haven't been to the show yet.
Right on. Getting close. We're almost at the top of the hour. It starts recording automatically because this is yeah.
Oh, it's recording, it says.
Oh, can you hear this? Hold on a second, Matt. A moment. Okay. Can you hear this?
No.
No sound?
Oh, a little bit. Yeah. Slow.
It's off now.
Welcome.
I'm gonna start playing the
The Peace
Revolution podcast. It's so funny. Where is my guest? Huh. Do you want to be my guest?
Sure, whatever. I'm here.
No, I'm just joking. He'll be here, I think. He's really is just rebooting his computer. Gosh. I was so prepared. Hey, there's another one. Yay. Not only is she excellent, she's raising excellence. Excellence is her child. I'm going to give Dawn a few minutes. Hey, what's up? Go ahead. Speak as you wish.
Huh?
I'm the child for me.
Oh. Come on, Dawn.
Never brave enough to have outside children.
Gosh, I'm going to boost my power. Sound.
See, it's interesting because when you're playing music in the background, it doesn't do that thing that Michael's thing does. Just break, 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 break. You know what I mean? If
Well,
but it
I'm
doesn't
gonna
show up, you're just gonna introduce somebody else. You're fine.
I'm gonna trust him that he's gonna show up later. I'm gonna introduce him anyway, and then I'm like, hey, there he is, because he just messaged me that he's restarting his computer.
Theoretically have an interview with somebody who's not there.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We can all take turns answering questions you have for him.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Yeah, 5-2, he said, send me a link resetting my computer now. That's 5 minutes ago. 7 minutes ago. Could take more than 7 minutes to restart a computer.
It could.
I'm just leaving that there.
You have to do it twice.
All right, here we go. We're going live. We're live. Hey, it's that wonderful time of the day, everyone. It's time for love and support sessions. I'm your host, Lee the Wayfinder. How y'all doing?
Doing great, Lee. How are you?
Very well. Hey, hello, Adam James. Thanks for coming in. Hey, all of you, please say hello if you don't mind.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Lee.
Hello, everybody. Hey, Lee.
Hey, James Ford. Nice to meet you in the podcast here. I saw yours earlier today. All right. Where's my intro music playing? Oh, there it is. Can you hear that? All right. All right. Once again, welcome to Love and Support Sessions. If you don't mind, I would like to introduce it in this way. We're waiting for him to jump into the room, but my scheduled authentic guest for today is Don Clarke, whose topics will include Tantra, health, and relationships. And of course, we'll have more details, and we'll also divide those subjects up into like at least 3 parts. So, what is the Love and Support Sessions podcast about? Well, as we know, loving relationships are an integral part of a lifestyle that celebrates individual liberty and freedom. The Love and Support podcast is a scheduled time to openly discuss the relationships that flower between men, women, friends, and families. We are here to offer anyone an opportunity to be heard, and we're ready to listen with our hearts. I will be inviting all guests with stories to tell and encourage all Autonomy members to take part in this call, which is why I hope you're here. So, if you are a first time listener, I should tell you that part of the reason why I began this podcast, looks like my guest is arriving. That's great. Was because for a long time I wished to discuss some health issues that relate to what goes on between adults, men and women. I thought this was pertinent because as someone who lives in Taipei, Taiwan, my personal research and conversations with friends and lovers, I guess you could say, because at that time I wasn't married, but it also included my wife, gave me the understanding that discussions around sex and energy and health were not common at this within the last decade, let's say. Although I don't believe it's like to have changed much since then. I would have to do further research to find out if here in 2020 and now coming into 2021, if that has changed, but I suspect it has not. And in fact, if I had to guess, I would guess that in the age of face masks and discussion of what they call social distancing, I would have to guess that it is pushed deeper or further out of the light, honest discussions about health and how men and women can relate to one another in such a way that they encourage the health of one another and also participate in a spiritual connection. Not everyone might agree that when a man and a woman are together, that it's about spirituality, but perhaps that person or persons are not fully honest with themselves or might need to explore that in their own way. And he's disappeared again. He's out of here again. All right. So let me take this opportunity to put a question to any guests that would like to enter in discussion of this. What is your understanding of the sexual relationships between men and women, and is it connected for you to spirituality? Any volunteers?
Sure.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah. I think that's one of the benefits of getting older. It's like I think when we kind of get over some of the earlier stuff, we're more concerned with ourselves when we're younger. We kind of have more of the ego stuff going on. And then the more we let go of that, I think that place that we call spiritual, we're more able to we share more of ourselves. What we like, not the ego, not what we want out of that relationship, or maybe the idea we have, but we're able to be more present with whoever it is we're with. And it's better, you know?
I agree with you. And what you just said is exactly the type of information and discussion that I had hoped to participate in this podcast.
I wish I was more successful at it. Talking's one thing.
Right. Yeah. And for any of the parents out there or children under the age of 18, you may or may not find this to be a challenging discussion. It's up to you to decide if it's something that you're able to handle, or if it's your children in the room or in the home with this being played. You have to make that decision on your own. We believe in freedom and liberty, and you have to make those decisions to take responsibility. But that being said, it's going back towards health and spirituality. Thank you, James Ford. Any other guests? Would you like to comment or perhaps provide what's the word I want?
Yeah, I'll comment
observation
on that. I think James is onto it. I am fortunate to be in a relationship with a spiritual partner now. It's the first time ever that I have a relationship that works, that's not crazy. And we pray together every day, and we witness miracles all the time, and it's amazing. I just feel really blessed. But I think it's because I'm 58 years old now, but I'm done messing around. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that what James said is true.
That's really beautiful. Hey, I made it here, by the way.
Welcome, everyone. Please welcome today's authentic honored guest, Don Clarke. Hey, Don, how you doing?
Hey, I'm just coming through the other side of a computer that takes 20 minutes to restart over here. I thought I had plenty of time, but this thing's running Windows, so oh my gosh.
Yes, that's right. All right, I was just asking for some comments or observations on the relationships of men and women, and how that might or might not, depending on their observations, relate to spirituality. There's two more guests, Agnieszka or Adam James. Would you like to offer any observations before I turn things over to my wonderful guest?
I think it requires spirituality, but not necessarily like the monogamous spirituality.
I agree with that. I actually have one of my topics, if we run out of time, or if we have extra time left over, is open relationships, because that's something I have a bit of experience in, and I've talked to people a lot about, and that can definitely play into a spiritual form of relationship. That can be something that some people kind of feel they need in a relationship.
Right. Gosh, a lot to look forward to today. I'm very excited. It's hard to contain my excitement. Adam James, did you want to say a few words before, once again,
I'm gonna say this at the risk of, I don't know. I had an amazing first date with somebody last night, and I'm just thrilled that happened. So yeah. I don't know. I'm listening. I'm all ears. I'm in input mode.
Cool. I'm sending positive vibes for that relationship. It sounds awesome.
That's great. I'm happy for you, Adam James. And anyone else who's on the call who's also, experiencing some happiness and enjoyment between the give and take that happens between two beings that are enjoying one another's presence. Well, my guest here today, or this evening for most of you, I'm in Asia, so it's morning for me, is Mr. Don Clarke. I met Don through the Autonomy program. We were both seasons 4. Don, have you had your graduate call yet? Have you graduated, or in your mind, are you graduate?
In my mind, yeah, sure. No, on the list, I'm on the list. My video call hasn't been recorded yet, but otherwise, yeah.
Very close. So yes, you are. It just that hasn't been official, so to speak, yet. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I became friends with Don during our Autonomy Season 4 course, and we've had discussions on and off again. And during some of those discussions, this kind of thing came up. Our discussions included talk about relationships, how people relate to one another. Some people have what they describe as monogamous relationships. Other people describe they have relationships that they describe as open relationships. And Don was willing to discuss this with me and also become a guest on the podcast. So Don, would you also like to introduce yourself perhaps and let us know where you're coming from and yeah, some of it, your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Don. I'm a corporeal jester spirit, and I come from an area in America called New Jersey. It's like way over on the east side. Yeah. I don't know. I have no formal background in any kind of teaching or anything like that. I'm except for maybe Reiki, if that counts. Otherwise, I just have studied and learned a lot of things over the years, and more or less, I like to figure out what works and what I can actually feel and discern is happening, you know, in some way. And I don't get into like unverifiable types of things that that I can't see any action for or proof that it's happened or have any effect on, you know. Like, so even though not that I'm I believe it is a subject, but I usually stay away from subjects like past lives and things like that, because that's not it, to me that's less concrete, you know. That's like I can't really say I definitely know this and make declarative statements about it. So I tend to shy away from those kind of spiritual areas, but I'm willing to talk about them if anyone wants to. My ended up toward spirituality was through Tantra. That's actually how I was a very left-brain person. My whole life, I was a student of Ayn Rand and objectivism and you know, what's this guy, Adam Smith, and his economic theories. And I was really into like math and numbers and macroeconomics and very left-brain things for a super long time. And it just is more studies I did, you know, eventually you come across ideas that there's like, oh, there's more to life than just facts and material stuff, you know. And so it became important to me. Like eventually, my first relationship was really late in life. I was 23, and so I had plenty of time to study how to be in a relationship. Like I just spent a lot of time watching how my friends and stuff were in their relationships and all the terrible things that happened to them with their, you know, juvenile 17, 18-year-old relationships and all. And kind of like you watch enough boats crash, you might figure out how to not drive a boat. And so eventually I realized what, you know, some things I'd seen from that, and had some time to study. So I thought, you know, I'll look into, you know, what makes a person a good partner, what makes a person a good lover. And it turns out that a lot of people said that you should look into this Tantra thing. And I was like, I don't know, dude, that sounds like some woo-woo stuff. That sounds like some spirit energies and things. And I don't know if I want anything to do with that. But, you know, I looked into it, and then as I started to incorporate some of the actual practices, I noticed like, oh, I can definitely feel these energies, and I can see the color change in my partner's skin. You can hear the tone of their voice change, like change registers and things. Here's the tip that many people don't know. On your, you know, there's
this is great stuff. This is great stuff. Go.
Thanks. There's a system of chakras in the body, right? Now, some people say there's like 12, and some of them are not in the body. Some people say there's more, but there's up the spine, there's like some energy that flows in your body, and that relates to how you manifest your spirit and how you bring the more subtle parts of life into the more physical areas and such. And so most people would split it into like 7 chakras, right? So, and those kind of correlate with 7 harmonic notes of certain musical scales, right? So as your partner, you can tell where your partner is. I'm not just saying, oh, your partner like sexually too. I'm saying like, even in a conversation and things, right? People go, or they might go, and there's like different notes, and you can hear what chakra the other person is in. If you learn, you can at least hear the changes between them. It might take you a while on a new person to figure out this sound means this, but you can figure out the changes between them when the person goes, and you're like, oh, they're changing the way that they're literally changing the way that they feel about this thing, or the way that they see it, you know? So
So
once
do
I
you-
noticed some things like that, I realized that like there's
Yeah.
something to this. So then that's what got me more into spirituality. So even the spiritual knowledge I have is even more of a kind of left-brained hermetic style, where it's like knowledge as opposed to just feeling your way through things.
This is exactly what I was hoping to have in conversation. Was there a moment where you had an aha moment that you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. So I was doing some breath work, and I had been doing it for a while. And so I had, and many times in life, spiritual things especially are like this, where something's been happening to you for a long time, but it took someone to point out, hey, that's a thing, or for you to realize that, like, oh, that's a separate thing that's happening. I didn't know this. So I was doing some breath work one time, and I just noted that I could feel the energies like physically moving through the body. Like, I don't know if anyone's done some meditation, but you can feel like a whoop, whoop, whoop appear, and it moves around. And I just, after I have just sitting there, perfect stillness for like 15, 20 minutes, but I can feel so much motion going on inside. I'm like, this can't be the blood. This is not like, I can't be feeling like lymph nodes or something else, you know, like there's some kind of energy that's moving through the body for sure. There's like no way to deny that this is a real thing.
Wow. Wow. I felt something like that in a group meditation. I was attending a university in Canada, at Trent University, and the course was called Japanese and Chinese Philosophy. The professor told us, he said, next week in class, please arrive a little bit early. We're going to have a guest lecturer, and he's going to lead us through some guided meditation practices. So I was very excited about that because I never had any experience like that before. There were a couple different things going on in that class, and there were about 20 people in the room, everyone just sitting comfortably on the floor, most in half lotus position. And I was having some pride in myself because I felt I can breathe deeper and longer than most of my classmates. And I could see some kind of response in the person leading these exercises. He had like a coaching practice. And then it began, we began chanting shamat. And as I went on for a while, I started to feel this thing. I'm over here, I'm over there, I'm over here, I'm over there. I could feel myself like bouncing back and forth. And then that's when I had some kind of inclination that these, like you mentioned, vibrations were what could have an effect on me and my sense of where I was. And that was a while ago. That was like quite a while ago, and I haven't noted many things since then. Please continue.
Yeah, there are sometimes these situations where you feel, yeah, like in Mike's situation and the one you're in, right? It's like where you feel something's moving, but you're not moving. Like none of your body is moving, but something's certainly moving around here that you can feel, right? And there's sometimes where like for one time I did this thing where well, I practiced intermittent fasting for a while, and then I didn't eat for like 7 days in a row. And it's just, you just get that weird feeling after a while. You're like, what is keeping this thing going? I haven't put anything in here in I don't know how long. And it's just still running at the same speed. Like there's more to this than just this physical element, you know? And then, you know, you get like once you start learning into spiritual traditions, you see that like most traditions have like a chart of some nature, and it's usually a continuum from down to up or left to right. And there's like, you know, more. One of the things I wanted to talk about here was the difference between crude and subtle. So all these religions have or spiritual traditions in general have like a sense of like crude matter, like hard reality, and then like things that are more subtle, right? That are more like behind things or like above them, maybe, right? And so this kind of goes into this concept of expansion, which is like so the hardest, the most condensed thing might be like, you know, something like iron, right? That's like completely crushed. There's almost no space between the atoms. And so in these atoms, there's almost nowhere for them to go. They have almost no choices left as far as places they could possibly be or directions they could be moving in. They're just like, this is, things have concretized down to the point that it's no longer in the future. It's no longer perspective. It's like, this is now this exact thing. And then things can expand to different levels. So something, it keeps expanding, it'll become a liquid. And at that point, it no longer has a definite shape. It could be a number of places, but it's all going to be together. but there's a number of places it could be. And then as things expand some more, then it's a gas, and it's like, well, it's basically everywhere, or not really in any particular place. If there's, you could sort of say there's a certain amount of it, but even that's a bit iffy because it depends how hard you push it and all. And so in that same way, there's a lot of things in the spiritual realm where things move essentially from like a more crude and concretized way into a more subtle way. So one of the ways you might see that is with like a situation where at the most basic level, right, the most concretized physical level, there are little or no options remaining as far as what things could be, where they could be, or how they're moving, and things like that. Even the kinetic aspects of hard physical matter are basically decided upon as far as, not only is it hard physical matter, but things that are currently now, right? There's like, but then as things move to the more subtle aspects of life, it's like there's more options about where they could be or how they could be moving and things. Another issue too with the whole issue of paradigms and like a crude to subtle matrix that you'll see across many different kind of religions and things is that there'd be like a limited or one perspective simultaneously in the very low end to at the end might be a being or force capable of all perspectives simultaneously or many perspectives. And human beings don't live on any of these particular places, right? It's not actually true that humans live in the hard physical world, but there's some magic world up there where God is, right? Humans span all of creation. So humans are in the hard physical realm, but we're also way up high in the higher subtle realms too, where it's not even like a body per se anymore. And so the humans also can exist. It's not in the more simplistic psychological theories, you'll see people have this idea that humans just have one perspective. Like you just think of yourself as you and you're just the ego and that's it. Like behaviorism does this because they study animals. So, maybe that's what the animal is for the most part. And so like they just have the perspective of like who they are right now and that's it, right? But as you're living as a person, that's not how you are. Like you see another person, you're thinking, what's this guy thinking now? So now you're kind of living in your head and you're living in his perspective too, to some extent, right? And then you have like your family and friends. And so if something happens in your life, you might be thinking, oh man, what would my dad think about this? Or you might be thinking like, my friends probably wouldn't like that I'm going to do this, but I'm about to do this anyway, So there's some ways in which you can choose to be in your one perspective, or you can choose to be in many different perspectives and consider them all kind of together at once. To some extent, this is what a lot of the communitarians, you might say, like communist socialist people are after, is sort of an expansion from a limited, what they see as a limited me, one person perspective to a consideration of many or the whole, which is, in that way you can see what they're going for. Like, oh yeah, that's not a bad idea, Another aspect too that where religions have a continuum is like a situation of little or no awareness to a more full awareness, right? So some people would call this like a scale of consciousness, and maybe they would place animals below humans in some level or another, because there's a level of awareness of these perspectives, right? So animals may not be aware that there's like a realm of ideas or a spiritual realm or like a platonic world of forms or something like that, right? Maybe they're not living in all those places at once because they're kind of living here doing the things that they can perceive with their own particular senses. Whereas one of the things you can do as a person is learn to inhabit these higher perspectives where you're not necessarily out of your body, you're in your body, but there's more to it than that too. A lot of this actually falls into this idea of expansion too, where it's a thing that expands is still in the place it was. It's just also in these other places now out further. So as your consciousness is where it was too. Like when you're, some of us, we're still carrying around our child selves. We're still like a baby inside, right? But you're more than that too. So it's not like that's just all there is to you. So you still carry all the previous perspectives that you had before, like, say for me, like there was a part where I was like a militant atheist. I would like take pride in like deconverting people and stuff. And so that part's still there, you carry those around. It's just that's informing it, but there's more to you now than that. It kind of goes along with the integral theory perspective of evolutions, where, every evolution is like the previous thing plus some more. You don't wipe the system clean and then come up with a new system out of nowhere. You build on the previous system. You know, that's how evolution kind of works. It doesn't like throw out the tiger and then make a saber-tooth tiger. You just take the same tiger and just make his teeth longer, and it's a lot smarter to do it that way.
That's comforting in a way, because I still love that young man I was, or that child, even when he made mistakes, even when I was sinning or missing the mark on certain things that I was trying to achieve, whether I was learning about my relationship to women, or my relationship to family or friends. You know, that's, I wouldn't want to lose that. I wouldn't want to divorce or make an orphan of that part of myself. You know, I'd rather take steps and like you just said, build on what I have already and just take it further, do it better. Yeah.
Yeah, to some of the self-help schools that people get into have this idea of like sort of eradicating or crushing your previous self, or even like say military boot camp will do this, where it's like just whatever you were before, I don't care, you're going to be this new thing now. And it's a more holistic perspective for sure to carry your previous selves, not like like you're carrying them around with you. They're not it's not like, oh, every terrible thing that happened to you is just in your head all the time, but like all the things you used to be are informing who you are now, and that way you're not denigrating the previous selves, because what like it or not, you're carrying them with you. Those memories are in your head and stuff. So if you don't, if you can say you don't like who you were before, but you can not like it and then add on to it and build a better one. But it's probably best not to just wall that thing off and push it to the side,
Right. Right.
So one of the on the subject of tantra, right, and expansion, tantra is made of these two words, tan and tra, right? And there's two ways basically of seeing these two words. One of them is tan as an expansion and tra as a liberation, right? So it's a system of like expansion as far as encompassing new perspectives and becoming a more full being, and also expanding inwards to more fully inhabit your body and your power here in the physical world. But also a system of liberation as far as like freedom from, say, attachments or limited perspectives and things, right? Because as you expand your awareness, you're also keeping you're helping yourself out of situations where you had kind of just thought yourself into a loop. Well, if this is true, then this has to be true, and this is true, and then you can't figure out your way out of the problem. And so to some extent, that's what people are after when they're studying Tantra. Another way to look at it too is the word tan can also be seen as an instrument. And so Tantra is an instrument for liberation. And one of the key principles of this school of thought is that you not only do you see everything on the inner world as an instrument of liberation, but also everything on the outer world too. Like all of these things that you're seeing on the outside are there to help you grow and expand and be more full and complete of a being. And as well, all the inner parts of yourself too, like to not to be denying them, but those parts are there to help you become more fully who you are now and who you will be tomorrow. And so all these things are needed, right? It's kind of like the perspective of like, we need all of us, like some people say like, well, these people are sheep and we're not going to talk to them or whatever, right? But ultimately all the perspectives are going to have to be combined into the same perspective to get a really complete picture of where we're going or who we are.
Thank you for that comment. Thank you for that comment. I've totally failed to mention something in my very first episode, and that was a message to all beings, all human beings, because I don't need to describe or include the animals, the fish, the flyers, the four-leggeds in that. I think they know very well what they're meant to do. I think human beings often get lost. And so my message out into the universe of living human beings is that if you are trapped or you feel bound by aberrant behavior, that's okay. But you should remember that your human family would like to invite you to come home, come back and rejoin us and move away from those things that you feel maybe shame or that you don't no longer agree with, these actions, organizations, habits, that you've had in the past, and that doesn't have to be the end of your story. Your story can take a new direction. Thanks for that, letting me put that out there. Go on.
Yeah, lovely. You could always add a new ending. And one of the beautiful things about living as a human is that we are meaning, some people would say meaning making machines. I like to say meaning sensing machines, but that's sort of a technical difference. But so if you add a new ending to the story, now you've actually changed the meaning of the beginning of the story. Sometimes, let's say if a big twist happens in a movie that you're watching, right? Then you'll think, not only do you think, oh, I didn't know what was going on here, but previously when those first scenes didn't mean what I thought they meant either. Your own life can be like that too, where if you're adding a new ending onto your story, now the previous scenes that were a part of a tragedy are now actually just a setup for a comedy or a triumph that was happening ahead of time. So and this doesn't require you to reach into the past or to do any time traveling, but through the magic of meaning, essentially, you can change what the first part was. One of the things that we're doing as people is interacting with meaning more than we're actually interacting with the objects themselves or the world as it is. We're interacting with what it means to us. And so in a way, you can always modify the meanings, even when you can't modify the objects. Again, with the subtle and crude thing, right? The crude things are done set in what they are, and there's not a lot you can do with that, but you can change what they mean to you or what they're going to mean to your future. So on the topic of Tantra as a whole, right? Tantra is they call it instruments of liberation, right? So originally, Tantras were books that the people had written. We're talking like 7,000 years ago when there were hardly even any society. And so the Tantra being brought to your people or your area would actually civilize the people of there to an extent. It was kind of like, here's, in this book, it shows like where we could be going. It's like, here's more possibilities for us than just this, barbarous kind of existence we've been having up to this point. And so it gave people kind of a direction. Like once you have a goal, it's like, oh, everything else kind of is aligning toward that goal now. We can see what we were doing before. Sometimes you have to like act out a certain thing and then look back and see what you did and go like, oh, that's what I was trying to do. So when the Tantras came along, it was kind of like people read them and were like, oh, that's what we were doing the whole time. We were trying to get here where this guy is, or something like that. Or this guy's describing a place that we were trying to get to. And so just the existence of these books in the beginning, the first one I think was actually just called like the Tantra, was literally just the existence of those books like changed how people saw themselves in the world at that time. And so being that Tantra is really just about your liberation as a being and your expansion into new places. A lot of people in the West, we have basically moved that word Tantra into like one of its smaller aspects, which is like the sexual aspect. But much like a human being, right? Like say for you, your sexual aspect is maybe like what, a seventh or so of your being as a human being. It's like this little piece in the middle, not so little, but this piece in the middle. And then, like that is, it's not your whole being. It's like maybe that's the foundation of your being, and it's certainly an important part. It can't be left out, but it's not like the whole being. And so Tantra is kind of like that too, where in the West, we kind of see it and books are sold and websites and seminars and things are sold as if Tantra is about sex or something, right? But that's not any more than saying like a human being is about sex. It's not really how it is, right? So like many people don't know that like all of the yogic positions are like a tiny, tiny subset of part of Tantra. There's a part of Tantra that includes these 8 maha somethings, I forget what they're called, but one of them is the asanas, which are like the types of poses of yoga and things like that people use. And then there's a couple schools of meditation that are involved in there, like Taoism is an offshoot of the Tantras, and Zen Buddhism is, Tibetan Buddhism is, all have their roots sort of in the earlier tantric theory, just because like no one had written any book like this before. So of course everyone who was going to think about philosophy had to read that book. So like they're all kind of coming from that perspective, I guess, in a way, like how in the West we have what people call the Great Conversation, which is like going back to like Plato, and then all these books kind of built on that book. This is sort of, the Tantras are sort of like the beginning of it for like the Chinese Indian culture, where this was like some of the earliest writings that they even have. And so everyone kind of read them because they only had like 3 books at the time. So, you kind of had to have that book. The two pieces of Tantra, right? The expansion and the liberation. If you think about it, expansion is like pushing outward against a force, right? And liberation pretty much indicates in the word that someone's trying to keep you not liberated. And so ultimately, these two things are two struggles. And so one of the key aspects to just the word Tantra, the way the word is even drawn in Chinese, in the ancient Chinese they had at that time, is that it's both of those aspects indicate a struggle. Like this isn't going to be an easy path. This is not a thing you do to make your life nicer. You know, like it's not like, oh, I was going to do this and I'm going to like start working on myself real hard, and that's going to make things like an easier and more pleasant day. It's just like this is a thing that you do to attain these valuable goals, but it's not necessarily going to be like it's not for fun, you know. And a lot of people in the West take Tantra, you know, and again with that sexual aspect, as it being like a, you know, like a cool weekend thing to do or something, and not like a way of life or something that informs your being. One of the aspects of Tantra is a very strong god or goddess tradition. And so there's a lot of aspects of like, you'll see this in a lot of the ancient cultures, like the ancient Viking culture has this a lot, and a lot of the other pagan cultures have this thing where a person, where the thing is called a god, and it's like, you know, has a personification, but really it's like a force of nature, or like even more so like maybe an emotion. Like in the Greek areas, it was more like those were like emotions. Like Ares is like warlike destruction, you know, and so that guy, whenever he showed up, it like represented that thing, so you would know. So you could even say at the time maybe like, well, I'm kind of feeling Ares right now. You might want to get out of my way. And so that's kind of how Tantra has these different gods and goddesses in the tradition, which represent creative forces in the universe, or maybe like things that are the causes of how things happen here. And in doing so, they can show you how these forces necessarily go together. So there's like the what is it, Mahakali, right? Is one of these, the feminine one, where the Kali energy brings with it this destructive aspect and like a protective, like a vicious protective aspect. But then the Maha aspect is more of the motherly, tender, supportive kind of love. And that's to show people that those two things go together. Like in, as far as in the feminine aspect or of spirit, right? Like those two things are necessarily together, that if you really care about something, you want to protect it, that's nobody mess with that thing, because they're going to get the horns, you know, it's not going to be good. And so it kind of taught people about themselves in a way, like they're forms of gods and goddesses, even if you were to strip off the religious worshipful aspects, or in a way just to show people like, these are how your inner parts work, essentially. And so Tantra, to some extent too, is a study of how humans work internally, but also like how that interacts spiritually with the way the universe is going to bring things up for you or represent things to you. So one of the key things about the instrument part of it, right, about how things are instrument for liberation, is that whenever something comes up in you, even if it's something you, even if, whether it's something you like or not, you want to greet it with like a namaste, which is the term for like, I see and acknowledge the divine in you, or speak to the divine in you with the divine in me. So that when something comes up in you that you don't like, say some negative self-talk, or maybe some kind of like anger that you don't know where it's coming from, the first thing you want to do is to greet this thing with like, thank you for being here. I appreciate what you're here for. Like, I understand you two are an instrument for my expansion. Maybe I don't understand how right now, how that could be, you know, but this is here to teach me something, you know. And similar on the outside of life, when troubles pop up or problems pop up, might be like, this is how I learned this thing, you know. Even when people have a success most of the time, and someone interviews them and it's like, man, how did you get so good at this thing? Usually they'll describe a problem. They're like, oh, this thing happened, and then I had to figure out my way around that, and then that's how I became who I am today. And so a lot of times in life, you want to try to recognize the divinity of like what's happening around you. Is one of those sort of tantric things. But I didn't want to cover a whole lot about that. Unless people have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. But I'm not any kind of an expert, and in tantric circles on the internet, I'm kind of a rogue, because I don't really go with the new agey aspects of a lot of it. You know, I tend to stick to the very older books. I would say if anyone were to look into Tantra, try to find yourself some of these like 3,000-4,000-year-old books. They're actually not hard to find, even in PDF form on the internet. And the older ones are generally better because of this whole issue with the New Age movement that people might know about, how there's the Lucius Trust back in the 1900s, and now they eventually that event, and they kind of created this New Age thing so as to hide true spirituality from the masses, and they eventually became the United Nations. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah. Okay. So at this moment, would anyone like to discuss or make an observation or ask a question of Don? Feel free. Please do.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, you hit on a lot of good things there. I think one of the things you mentioned in regard to Tantra and the idea of instrument of freedom is, we've been in the Great Books Club. We've been going through the, essentially the justification of the philosophy that is, modern philosophy. And to some degree, it is one in which it really kind of glorifies war and really is, justifying the idea that the ends justify the means, and that it is one in which the master class is really, like Nietzsche describes the master morality versus the slave morality. And it is the master morality is the one that does what they want and gets everybody else to do it. And if you can do that, you win. And that's essentially, I think for the most part, what Western philosophy is promoting. And to some degree, that is like a very minuscule amount of what reality is. In fact, it's a dying idea, because it doesn't go anywhere. It just keeps, it's trying to control, and is essentially, it's going to control things until there's nothing. It just, it's ever decreasing. When you talk about the expansion and I kind of think of like awareness as a sphere. And we have awareness that is our own, and then we combine those with others, and like humanity has a sphere of awareness, and we are either expanding it or we're contracting it. And to some degree, we're contracting it for the most part, I think, because people are getting less aware and more ignorant. But you talk about the books as essentially describing other things. Like the awareness of other ways of going about the world is definitely something that is, that is possible. And I think the fact that we have so few artifacts that suggest that really is something that's really, really important. The other thing that I thought was really cool that you said, in regard to what you were talking about with like writing a new ending. I think one of the greatest pieces of philosophy is the allegory of the cave. And, the idea that particular ending is a reflection of human nature. When the reality is, well, that's just the way the story is wrote. What if we wrote it a different way? What if
That
the
is
guy
a really
came back
good
to the
point.
cave and said, hey, everybody, come on out, and everybody came out. And then we say, oh, well, human nature is that, awareness wins.
Right. Yeah. That's they always do things like that. They always have it's always about the frame that they put on it. They don't even have to necessarily hide the facts. It's just, push this out of the frame or maybe crop the policeman off this picture and make it look bad all of a sudden. Yeah. They do those kind of things a lot. And it's like the concept of the encyclios paideia, where it's like the circle that you can walk in. Essentially, they like hammer a post down in the ground and tether you to it, and it's like you can walk anywhere you want to because nothing exists outside this circle. Because if you were born with the leash on, you wouldn't even think that you could, like, there was a leash that's holding you back or something. And it's the same thing with the way they would do things with those stories too. It's like I don't know if it was Plato himself or people that had gotten a hold of his work over the times, because it's been whispered down the lane for several thousand years at this point. But a lot of his work looks like that. It looks like if you cut this out or angle this a certain way, it looks real bad. But yeah, that cave thing could have gone either way too. It's the same thing there.
Well, I think we really can't speculate on a lot of the history because it's been edited over the years, and to some degree, what has been edited out, we don't know. When it was edited out, we don't know, and so all we have is what we have. And as I look at it more, I am convinced that there's a lot of editing going on. And if you look at the way that they're doing with the internet, it's really just another version of what they've done with everything else. And to some degree, you've got to come to the realization that if we're just going to repeat this again, we're going to go through this again, we're going to have an awareness, and then people are going to essentially be put back in a box or put into several boxes or whatever. But over a period of time, that control is going to take and squish that back into what they need to control things. And so I would think that that's just another version of that. When you're talking about the gods and how it represents different things like moods or motives or feelings that people have or emotions that I'm thinking that, what do you think about like the Jungian archetypes and how Jung has kind of associated these different gods and different legends and rules with really kind of our own human archetypes, and how that reflects in our subconscious nature, our unconscious nature, and all that other kind of stuff. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of corollary there. There's a lot of crossover between the Jungian archetypes and the gods and stuff of pagan religions. One of the differences there being the gods are not entirely, but largely arbitrary, as far as those are all different ways of looking, and you could look at it a different way and it would be kind of similar. Whereas it's like every culture has a god of war, but not all the gods of war are the same. In some cases, the god of war is also the god of something else, because they look at those as maybe two different aspects of the same coin or something. And so to some extent, those are going to vary from culture to culture, where the archetypes don't, because those are essentially primary psychological realities. It's like the thing happened so many times that it's basically, depending how you look at it, it's basically like, say, in the DNA, or it's in your hereditary psychological history that say like snakes or something, for instance, right? It's like that fear of snakes thing is just in there, like that's something that can be tested. It pops up everywhere. Like they have vampires of some nature or another in Japan and in like the Philippines and in America and like Native American cultures, even though they never like talked to or spoke to each other. And so like that's kind of thing that would be like almost the same or similar aspects in every culture, whereas the gods are more specific to each culture. Both are really important, and they can both be used as, you might say, instruments for liberation. But the archetypes, I feel like, are a more concrete existence, where they've been like tested, and we've found out like these are real, and they pop up, and we've done sort of scientific experiments to find them out. Whereas nobody has the balls or the funding to do a scientific experiment to see if the gods are real or not. I don't think anyone's pulled that trick off yet.
Well, I think that there's the potential that, like, with our mind being as capable as it is, that a lot of the things that we think need to be written down are things that we could probably put into our memory. So in a lot of cases, I think what a lot of these old legends and lores are really kind of memory palaces, where we're creating like a story that really kind of allows us to understand a whole concept and really like put all of that into our mind, where we don't really have to write the stuff down. And if that's the case, then like if you look at astrology and the constellations and the stories behind the constellations and all that stuff, I mean, there's a ton of information that is just out there that everybody can access if they were to really like understand like what the memory palace does in regard to then how that's tied into all these other legends and lores and things that people will uh, kind of naturally, because like that's what the movies and that's what the sports are. When you see people that can like recite all the statistics for all the football games or all the baseball players, Babe Ruth did this in 1912 or whatever, we have the capability to memorize a great deal more. And then with that information, kind of locked into our heads, the potential for us is much greater. And I think that's also one of the things that, I think is something that we should be looking into, is that like the oral tradition isn't just, like people telling each other stories, but it is really like how we actually like expand our awareness by like creating stories that like give us a much greater awareness of what's possible, and then what are the tools that we can use to further ourselves.
Yeah, that sounds like something you would know more about than I do. I'm not too familiar with a lot of these memory trick things. I know a lot of them exist, but I think you're really onto something there as far as how a lot of these legends have a lot more information encoded into them than we know now, or that we will be able to piece together. Yeah, I think a lot of those things, like for instance, when I was looking through Viking religions, there's a phrase that pops up called, like, they'll mention like the eagle, the bear, the lion, and the something else, right? And it turns out that these are actually the four aspects of like war making, essentially, and the four ways of which beings can be conquered. And it's some kind of like mnemonic device that they had put in, and it took people like decades to figure out what that meant, because there wasn't the key wasn't left for that puzzle. And I think a lot of those things are like that. Like for instance, how dragons kind of represent chaos, because the dragon has the claws like a predatory cat would have, and the teeth, and it's got the wings like a bird would have, and it's got like the lizardy scale scariness like a snake would have, because it's like the mass of all predators that prey on humans together. Whereas also that guy is also guarding the treasure and sometimes the princess, because when you voluntarily face the predators, the dangers in reality, you might get yourself a princess and or find a treasure. Like all the best treasures are hidden behind the places you don't want to look in. And so the parts that are really scary and make you want to turn away, if you're looking for some gold on the inside of yourself, you might want to look in those places. And that's all things that people had like encapsulated into the stories that we just don't know about nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, have you
Yes.
read the book Hamlet's Mill?
I have not. But
Okay,
I'm writing
Hamlet's
it down
Mill.
right now.
An essay investigating the origins of human knowledge and its transmission through myth, by Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deckend. This book came my way via Graham Hancock, who at one time I followed very closely, and I found the book interesting. It's easy to get a PDF version of it. I've never owned a copy of it, but it talks a lot about the movement of the stars, precession, the time cycles that can be observed in astronomy in the heavens, and it also looks at and compares a lot of the common elements in myths in many different cultures. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, this is a great conversation. It's this every time. It's like things, so much stuff coming out. But as far as yeah, I think I've come to understand our connection with maybe with astrology a little bit more later in life as being an aspect. And for me, my understanding of how that relates with myth is that it allows us, if we read something in myth, it kind of allows us to understand those aspects of ourselves as we discovered over time. Like, kind of a story of myth, we can go and remind me of like what Don, it's just so much, there's so much stuff said. It's like there, it's going bing, bing, bing in my head. But like early on, what you were mentioning about that animal aspect, and when Mike said about control, it seems that our limitations of fight and flight and like our reactive selves, when we kind of stuck in that thing, is kind of an animalistic kind of way. And the people that kind of push those buttons know, you know, when we're stuck in that limited place. And that's kind of how they really, a lot of the behavioralism, and I think for me, like that, when you mentioned the Tao, and me, it's such good stuff. Like, it's like Buddha, like, and then you go like to Buddhism. Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. He was a guy that, was going through this process. And then when he started explaining, he said, okay, this is Buddhism and it's attachments. And for me, that made me think of the Vedanta, like the end of knowing. It's like, because for me, like the formulations is like, just for my own stuff, we get stuck in fixed ideas, and for me, that's the perspective. That's the awareness. When, for me, when I understand, okay, wait a second, this one, at least from my own limited experience, like, oh shit, I had this fixed idea. And once I let that go, oh, my perspective opened up. And like Mike was saying, awareness, I think that's the same thing as consciousness. You know what I mean? I think, and, I think there is just one consciousness. We're all part of it. And and I think that's just the natural state of being, and Don, it's just so much good stuff. But it is like, I know. I understand. I think just to have an understanding of this stuff just makes us more able to be in a position to actually to have a relationship, whatever it may be. Because normally when we're stuck in that thing of like, I'm guilty of it myself, and most people are. I think that's where the compassion comes in for our fellows, right? Because that maybe that guy is stuck in that idea that maybe his uncle told him when he was 10 years old, and he's holding on to it, and he hasn't, not even a judgment, to make it simple, and he's acting out that pattern for the rest of his life. And we have a whole team of people out there doing that, that will never get past. And for me, it's that and like Don, you were saying earlier, I can't remember exactly how you put it, but that circle of behavior or think or whatever it is, we can get stuck in that without being able to observe it. So it's good stuff. But I think, and that relates to relationships. How could we ever really meet someone halfway if we can't get out of our own freaking head, or out of that thing, So it's good stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Relationships. Yes. How do we relate to ourselves? How do we relate to others? When I think of the best relationship I've had with women or a specific woman, I was not thinking spiritual. I was thinking excitement. I was thinking energy. I was thinking health. I was talking to her about, hey, have you heard of this? That if we continue being together for a longer period of time, that things will start to change in how we feel in regards to being in bed and our energy. Because I was not just interested in the, wow, I was more interested in the, where can this go? What is really possible? What can we find out? Are you as curious as I am? I can look at my partner as an undiscovered country. And I think there's something that you mentioned, Don. I can't remember, put my finger on it, but I had this sense that there's a lot to discover, a lot to discover. And that's what I was always looking for in that person I was with. Go on.
It's a process of continuous expansion. Yeah. I like how you put that about that relationship. Yes. One of the things that brings people to Tantra, and this is how it was for me, was in that sort of wow feeling when you first get into a relationship, and like a loving relationship, and you feel there's an inkling of like, there's more to this. Like, this means more than just this together sex romance thing. There's like more to it than that ultimately. And that's one of the central tantric beliefs that really spoke to me in the beginning was, and I would put it as sort of like, they see the orgasm as like a rainbow bridge. At one point I began writing a book, which some parts of it exist still on the internet, about world peace through orgasm, I think it was what I called it. Because essentially, right, the orgasm is like it's like Bifrost. It's like the rainbow bridge that connects the earth to the heavens, essentially, the lower to the more higher subtle aspects of the human being. Whereas that's actually like the places that you can get to in the moments during orgasm are sort of the same places in a way that yogis get to after like 10, 15 years of study. And but luckily to human beings, you have this like shortcut switch where you don't have to go through, not that you won't get the same thing exactly, right? But there's sort of a shortcut to the heavens, essentially, if you will. And then you can work on bringing that feeling, that awareness more into your current self, or the way you walk around life, or the way you interact with the people. And you'll start to, one of the things that people talk about in some of the more new agey sounding books that I've come across, it's like you're basically living orgasmically at this point, and all of your relations are carrying that energy, as far as that like complete expansion into more than just yourself. You know, for me, a lot of that aspect feels like you're inhabiting more than just your body in a way. It's like you're not just like simultaneously like your lover's body and yours, but like more than that, I guess. Like it's more like you almost like your body, like the objects around you and stuff have become your body in a way, or that like the more subtle aspects of the world around you are recognized as self, and like a higher S sort of.
Gosh, I feel for what you're describing that I feel like excitement and interest. I'm glad I'm still alive. You know, there were times when I didn't want to. I thought I should give up and go down into the darkness or take my own life. But my children and other things interceded or discouraged me from that. But today, listening to this conversation, I feel like excitement again. There's still a lot more to discover, a lot more to learn. What you said about the yogis or people who have practiced and what we might imagine they are feeling or experiencing. Okay, so 2001, I arrived in this country here in Taiwan. So, 18 years ago. And I remember having a conversation with this young woman, also from Canada. We were at a party or something. And we and other people that we spent time with, we enjoyed smoking cannabis, weed, taking some people were into like ketamine and various other things, but I like the leaf mostly. And I remember talking to her about this, and I said, I got a feeling that those monks or those holy men get some real strong enjoyment out of their practice as a result or byproduct. Why else would they do it? And it can't be just this thing of like enjoying sexual pleasure that can be useful or wonderful about human bodies. And this woman, she was someone who was very confident about her interest in people and being romantically involved and having relationships. She wasn't someone who was straight or chaste in her speech or action. She was someone who had no trouble telling people what she was interested in, what she wanted, whether it was like one relationship or she just would tell people, no, I'm not interested in a committed relationship. I'm interested in being here with you now and enjoying my time with you, but I'm not going to be marrying you and this kind of thing at that time. But she refused to consider that other viewpoint. I had no evidence. I was just theorizing with her. But I agree with you. I think there's got to be a reason why these people spend so much time and effort, not just to be, hey, I'm a holy man, look at me, or hey, I can, if I stay here and practice, I can stay in the temple and get free food. I really don't think so.
Well, that's
why shouldn't they have that?
No, that's true. But it makes me think of the movie. This may be the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when Paco, he's out, he's on the frontier, and they come up, and his brother brings him into shelter. Like that, then he's like, and he goes, and he starts scolding his brother for being like an outlaw, and he says, "You took the easy route," because it just was the thing. Not that it is or not. It just reminded us. But I think, and I think my point being is like we can do anything to serve our ego. And I remember I was at this. It was like people were volunteering at this place, and this guy came in, and he seemed like he was like, he was down and out, and they had coffee and donuts, and he went to go grab coffee and donuts, whatever, and someone said, "Oh wait, we shouldn't let him do that." And he was like, well, maybe he's hungry, he needs that, but maybe that'll bring him to you know what I mean? Into like you were saying, you're out there. Maybe that'll bring someone inside, just to share something like that. You know what I mean? I think I went off topic, but like for me, that's related to egoic. I could want to be the most, you know, I could want to be the best goddamn monk in Tibet. You know what I mean? So it could be egoic as well. I think that's my, well, that is, yeah, that's my thing. I think we can do anything egoically if we want to serve ourselves.
Sometimes enlightenment can be like what's that called? Like a competition. Yeah. Especially in those places like that where that's basically their life. I could see where if you're a monk and meditating is basically your life, you'd kind of want to be like, I'm the best meditator. You suck at meditating. Yeah. I'm meditating real hard.
I mean, again, I say this like I'm an ass. You know what I mean? I'm limited. I'm a limited person. But I think yeah, there's no judgment. I think that's the thing. No one could judge anyone anywhere on their path of where they go. You know, being in a monastery is probably a good place to, maybe, I don't know. But I heard someone say that enlightenment may not have anything to do with achievement, but actually the letting go of that baggage. That the enlightening is actually a lightening of the load of what maybe those things are, of the fixed ideas and the fixed these things that we hold on to. So it's not as much of an achievement as it is of, yeah. I guess that's what I should have said. That's what
I like that idea, because that definitely fits well with the word enlightenment. That definitely sounds like it. I do think there probably is some aspect of adding things to yourself as well, as far as like, you know, some smart ideas or something you might come across, but also to some extent, a lot of the way to be in life, a lot of, say, like Taoism and Buddhism and teachings are just the way everyone normally is if everyone didn't like mess with you all the damn time. You know, like if your parents aren't abusive and the other kids are nice to you, like you would be this way. But unfortunately, since life is life, here's a book about it instead, you know.
That makes me think about what you were saying earlier about monogamy. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with monogamy. I think what happens is like it's again like control. Like when you're young and you got things going on, it's like wait, whoa, you know. So it's like we're not using our brain, you know. And so when there's such a kind of structure where okay, well you're gonna have to do this and do this, and if you want to get a little bit of that, you're gonna have to do this, this, and this, and this. So a young guy, or even maybe a young woman, you know, they're like, all right, well I got to get over there, and I got to get over there and do this. And so they put all these structures. Someone finds all of a sudden they're married. They have all this thing that I'm in this role. Like I know this guy who anyway. But that's I think it gets it's like they put a control structure on top of something that's a loving exploration. You know, and I'm single. And I bartended for a long time, so I had a little bit of a, you know, so I had this beautiful woman give me a napkin with, she wrote monogamy on it. And she said, monogamy is the friend you'll meet every year for the rest, a new friend you'll meet every year for the rest of your life. And I didn't read it till late. I said, son of a bitch. She's right. You know, for me, that was that thing. If you meet that woman or that person, whoever it is, it's not that same person. You're both going to grow together throughout life. You know,
exactly.
Too bad I didn't get that when she gave it to me. I didn't understand.
Many people who are, I guess you'd say, in the polyamory community or whatever on the internet, most people by far are like against the concept of monogamy, right? But I've lived happily in both kinds of relationships for many years each, and so like I personally, and I've seen it. You know, I observe other people how they live their lives and things, right? And so I can see very clearly that, like, so the system of monogamy, there's, you know, the system with, like, say, a man pays for dates and that whole complicated system, right? Just like any system, some of it is just arbitrary stuff thrown on the system, and some of it is there for a real good reason. And so that's a system that more or less works more or less of the time for most people, and it covers a lot of problems that we don't even see much in our culture, but well, say 40 years ago, we don't see much of our culture because most people have been living that way. So we didn't see that monogamy was actually like correcting some issues that we didn't even know we had. And so that system's there for a good reason. So whenever someone thinks about opening their relationship or whatever, I usually caution them, like, be aware that you are hacking a system. Like, this is like, you can do that for sure. And there's certainly, you know, good reasons to do that, but you're going into your computer, you're messing up the firmware. Like, you better know what you're doing and be aware that whatever you change is going to have some issue come up down the line. And so, you know, the most important skills in open relationships are not anything to do with like the bedroom. It's more or less it's like repair skills and upkeep skills of the relationship itself. This is like, well, when it's like you're just assuming things will sure go wrong. Like, you know, I'm trying to bring another person into this relationship, so I'm going to go wrong. But the thing is that you have like a number of systems in place. If something goes wrong, here's what we do about it, and you're going to talk about it like grown-up people, and that's just how it is. So it's like, it's certainly not for everyone, the whole open relationship thing, and it's certainly easier if you don't try that. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily better one way or the other. It's just something, one's not better than the other. One's probably better for you today than another, but you know, you're going to be different tomorrow. And yeah, that thing about monogamy being not the same relationship is very true. Like, everyone goes through so much changes, you know, especially if you're in a good relationship with a good person, you're helping each other grow and expand. Like, you're both instruments for each other's expansion in a way. And so because of that, you're growing at such a rate that, yeah, you're way different than you were before. So it's always like, you know, the relationship is different, the sex can be different because you're always learning new things about that too, and ways to be, and all sorts of things can happen, you know.
I wanted to add something here, and I'm not exactly sure how this is going to go, but I'm going to start with, I got lucky enough when I was, you know, first in the Army. I got stationed in Germany, and really being introduced to that culture was a real shock in a lot of different ways, and certainly with relationships, and certainly just with living, because being that Germany had been like completely crushed, you know, just 30, 35 years earlier, and people had to live through, you know, essentially having everything destroyed, you know, their entire existence, practically everything was destroyed. And so their perspective on living was really about enjoying the moment. And to a large degree, you know, I really appreciated like how that gave a different perspective, because there wasn't, so I mean, like, so a lot of things weren't the same as in the United States. You know, certainly like prostitution was legal. You know, affairs were pretty much, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal. You know, people dealt with it, and you know, it just wasn't the same. And so I feel like certainly one of the things that when it comes to relationships, and certainly something that we need to consider, because I don't think it's like a dichotomy where it's one or the other. You know, I think there's a room for both. And I do believe that, like, you know, it is really like the moment that we have is really like the only time that we can actually affect and make decisions and make choices about what is going to go on in the future. And we've got to, you know, we've got to really kind of rely on what we've experienced in the past. But the only place that we can apply our power is now. And so that's really where the relationship is the most powerful. And that's where we can create the most powerful things in the relationships, and really experiment with things as far as, you know, what is and what isn't. I do feel like we've got a lot of growing to do when it comes to you know, what we understand to be relationships with others, and certainly to some degree, because of the situation as it is, I think in those respects, I think monogamy is one of those things that allows us to like have a partner that we can trust, that, you know, that allows us to, like, you know, be honest with. But then in a lot of cases, I see, you know, like they've taken that as a weakness, and they've used that for a lot of like the masses when it comes to like the monogamous relationships, like the old ball and chain kind of things that, like, when you look at most of the movies and kind of the stereotypical life that most people see and when it comes to like the relationships they have, like the most significant relationship they're going to have in their life, and they're basically downplaying it as, you know, as a prison, you know.
Mhm.
And to some degree, a lot of people fall for that, and it does become a prison, because it is really about the mindset, and what you said earlier about like the idea of namaste is the divine in me, you know, is, you know, shows respect to the divine in you, you know, that that it really is that opportunity that we have, that it is about our mindset. If we see things as a problem, well, then they're going to be a problem. But if we see those problems as opportunities, well, then we're going to see opportunities, you know. And so it really is, you know, when it comes to relationships, they're either we're either going to see them in a mindset of, okay, those could be potential problems, or we can see them as opportunities. And I really think it is our choice, and it's always our choice. And it's all, you know, like when we get with other people, offering them choices is really like the most beautiful thing we can do, you know. And I feel like those are the most beautiful relationships, when you give other people options, or you give the other significant person that is on the other side of that relationship choices, and you say like, I'm going to try and expand your choices, and, you know, here we can go this way, or we can go that way, or we can go this way. That's when it really starts to get fun. And, you know, like I think, Lee, you were talking a little bit about something that I thought was, you know, describing adventure, you know, like the future. Like if you meet somebody and you're like, oh man, there's all these things that we could do together. That's adventure, you know. And that's kind of like when you offer someone a choice and they say, we can go this way or that way, and they say, oh, we're going to go this way. And it's like, all right, we're on the adventure. Let's go.
My way or the highway. It's my way or the highway.
Yeah, I think the choices thing is very important. It comes down to it. I mean, there's always, first off, every relationship should at minimum be consensual. So it's always a matter of choices, right? One of the issues that we find with like legal marriage is that once you've signed a contract, if you can't break that contract, it's basically no longer consensual. Like it was consensual when you signed it, but now, well, now you're stuck here basically. And that's how people end up with this ball and chain idea. Not that I'm against the concept of marriage or anything. I think one of the functions that marriage serves for us, or monogamy in general, is especially once you signed a legal marriage contract. And it used to be different before, like the Reagan era, where you can just get out of it now. But used to be that this is like a person who cannot run away. Like no matter what I tell you or what I reveal to you about myself, like these deeper shadow aspects that scare me, if I bring them up, I can show them to this other person and she can't run away. And she can do the same thing to me. Like she can just show me who she really is and all the dark parts, and I can't run away. And so this is maybe the only person in your life you can actually be that honest with. You can be as honest to tell them everything that scares you about yourself. And this other person is the same thing, where it's like they could do the same thing with you. They can really be honest, like, this is how I'm feeling about this thing, and I know it's a challenge for you, but this is how life really is for us, you know, because this person can't get away. And so that's one aspect too. Now, of course, as people, especially as, you know, a lot of us are autonomy people, and you're not really a fan of situations that don't involve consent or choice, you know, so there's some downsides to that also. But you know, one of the things people see, especially, you know, maybe people who are into, like, say, a BDSM style relationship or something, is that there's some advantages to having your choices limited too at times too. It makes your decisions simpler, and it might make it harder for you to go astray. That's something that you'll see with people's choices between, say, a monogamous and an open style relationship. It's kind of like with cooking too, right? Like some people really like to be like a scientist in the kitchen and be like, man, what if I add some of this? And then when that stuff, that'll caramelize on the outside, it'll get all crispy on the bottom, you know? And some people will like just want to throw something in the microwave and just have the food, you know? And it's not like, and because it's just simpler, and they're busy, they're just not into, I'm not going to spend 2 hours on my meal today. Like I got 15 minutes and I want to get back to what I'm doing. Some people are like that with relationships, where it's like you just want you know what you want. You just want to go get what you want, and that's it. Like, this is, I want my relationship done, settled. I don't want to have to, you know, work on it, think about it all the time. Like, just solid. And some people want to take the relationship and think like, how can we tweak this? What if we add this over here and then move this component? And what if you do this sometimes and whatever, you know, and mess around with it and see how it is. But it involves a lot of, yeah, it's scientific experiment when you're messing with your relationship in various ways. It's like, you can mess it up and have to go back and fix it, right? One of the things that is interesting about open relationships is that it's kind of a canary in a coal mine scenario, that you end up with other things too, like say psychological trauma, people who are traumatized. A lot of times people see themselves as like, either I am a traumatized person or I am not a traumatized person. But in our society, in many ways, the basis of the society is itself traumatizing and abusive. Like, for instance, the government is entirely funded on taxation and theft, essentially. And say a large part of the society is about telling you what you should dress at certain times and how you should look, and now you got to put your makeup on and things. And a lot of that, so when people have trauma, they're extra sensitive to these sorts of things. So they might get like triggered for certain things, whereas a normal person might feel a little bit of anxiety. It's not that it's actually totally okay for most people, but if you're traumatized, it's a problem. It's a problem for everybody. It's just some people just don't notice it because it's a small problem. And it's kind of this issue with open relationships too, right? Sorry, let me go back to the trauma thing. So if you have the trauma, if it comes up in your head all the time and you're like, this keeps happening, I'm going to have to do this thing to mitigate that. You come up with some kind of a way, like a thought process you might go through, or a physical thing you might do to try to take care of that process that's happening within you, right? The same thing can happen in an open relationship, whereas when a problem arises in an open relationship, then you have to get together with your partner and you sit and you tell them everything that you're feeling about it, and then you listen to everything that they're feeling about it, and then you talk about what might be a solution or what you would like to hear from the other person or whatever. Those are all just the things you should normally be doing in a normal relationship too. It's just that you don't have to. Like, if it's a two-person relationship, it's you get this idea that it's like, because you see it on TV and you think that like you know how it's going to be. So it's like, I married her, done, that's it, relationship solved. And it's like, it's not that simple, you know. And so
Gee, that would be simpler.
that'd be it. Like, hey, you sign the paper, it's over, baby. But no, it's not. That's not how it is in those relationships either. But it can seem that way, where you can be in a monogamous relationship for like 3 years and not have ever had a conversation like, how is this going for you? Do you feel like you want to be here? Is this helping you out or not? You know. But when you're in an open relationship, it's like you have choices about where you want to spend the night or who you want to be with. And so you actually have to talk with each partner, like, how is this going for you? Do you like this relationship? You know, those are the things you normally talk with another person like, but you should.
I've seen people who are married and they're still married and they just seem so unhappy. And when I've heard stories of people, you know, because I talk to, you know, my brother-in-law or someone, and they'll say, oh yeah, you know, we got pregnant or she got pregnant, and you know, so it's like it was a capture kind of thing. And I felt such a sadness for them. You know.
Yeah.
It's not, I feel sad that the woman felt that she needed to act, if it's true. Okay, I wasn't there at the moment of conception, so I don't know that that's true. But for him to feel that way, and not, as you just said, not to go and try to resolve that and work that out, I feel sad for them. Like I'm.
Yeah, it would be nice if they could have had a conversation about it. Like, if when the feeling came up for her, I'd like to have.
Wouldn't you want to? You know, like, women are amazing. Like, women, well, a lot of women relate very well to the men, and the men that they're involved with. But something happens, something has happened, or something continues to happen, and geez, people, you know, do your utmost. You know what? You've got a lot to gain and very little to lose. Very little to lose. And
if this person is your partner,
why prolong a long year after year of unhappiness that affects all the people around you? You know, the children and the other relationships. right? Perhaps it's that unhappiness that enables that person to go, oh, I'll spend time with my yoga instructor or my marathon coach because my husband can't talk to me or I don't want to see, and this kind of thing. It's just, maybe they're having difficulty being honest about that, for how they feel about that person after the honeymoon, so to speak. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to say, is that there have like these, in those kind of relationships, it's like this. Like if this person is your partner, they're, for one thing, they're living in your head all the time. Like whatever you see as their voice, whatever they like say you a lot, you hear in your head all the time. Like you might be doing something at work and you might even hear the thought of like your wife saying the thing she always says or whatever. But like even just the way they are, the way they see things, or subconsciously even like the way, like you might be doing something, you think, well, if my wife saw me this, she might not like it, but I'm just gonna, she saw me tell this joke, she wouldn't be very happy, but I'm gonna tell this joke, right? And then you do the thing. So like, it's so important to get that right, because it's always there. It's always there in your head. It's always there in your real life. Like when you come home, wherever you left your relationship, that's probably where it is. I mean, hopefully, it's like, that's always there. So it's like, it's so key to get these things right that just pop up in your life all the time. Because like, say if it's like you want to be greeted a certain way when you come home in the door, well, how many times are you going to come home? Like several thousand times you're going to come home. And so like, if you can just explain to your partner, like, hey, I would like you to at least like turn and acknowledge me when I come in, like that's going to solve that for every day for years. Whereas otherwise it's going to be a continuous issue.
I had that kind of conversation. Yeah. I could have done better with that, and maybe the other person could have done better at that too. But
It's
being the
really
person
hard
that
in
goes
the
out,
moment.
and then comes home, and I felt I was doing so many things for 3 other human beings in that relationship, and when that changed, and it was not only always a smile. Some days it was like, oh yeah, it's been a busy day, and I didn't mind. Some days they were like, hey, and the smile was like a light shining in my direction, and that was great too. But just that person being around. Go on.
Well, something I want to say in regard to the trauma thing, I've spent a lot of time with Bob Podolsky, and what he talks about is really trauma affecting your ability to really remember, because you kind of create amnesia when you're in a situation in which you've got 2 bad choices and you make one of those choices, and that essentially becomes part of your identity. And you really don't want to, you really can't deal with like like you don't understand why things are like, with one of the things he talks about is like when a lot of children um, have got this traumatic experience of not being fed when they want to be, then we want to eat. And so that, like they don't understand, like, why is it my loving parent not feeding me? I'm telling them I need to be fed. Why aren't they doing it? Well, a lot of the parents were advised, don't feed your baby, like feed them on a schedule. And so a lot of people have that trauma, but because of that situation, they create a dichotomy in their mind that says, I just got to stop crying, or I've got to, do something, and that becomes part of their identity, but they don't remember that. And so like a lot of people, when you ask them how much they remember of their childhood, most don't remember beyond like 5 years old. They don't remember the early years, probably because they've been traumatized. There's a lot of little traumas that have gone on, and it's not necessarily something that where they were physically abused or something. It was just where they created a circumstance where there's like 2 choices, and you don't understand why I've got to make this choice, but I've got to make something because I'm going to survive. I need to survive, and we're going to die or something kind of thing. But the problem is that all these traumas lead to blind spots. And these blind spots are what really kind of affect other people in ways that they're like, why doesn't he see that? Why does he treat me like this? What's going on there? And it is primarily because we just don't see the stuff, and it's it's in our head. It's this amnesia that's stuck in our head. And that's one of the reasons why we've got to deal with trauma and why we've got to stop traumatizing, our children, and kind of creating the circumstances where the government, with the institutions and everything else, the schooling system is traumatizing our children. But I also wanted to point out that, like, in the now, there is really a basis for like living a principled life, and kind of what we were talking about earlier about kind of what James was talking about as far as enlightening ourselves, is really kind of sharpening ourselves. It is really kind of getting rid of the stuff that we're not, it's not us, it's not our thing, and just doing the thing that is our thing, and really honing that. Because when we do that, it is almost like synchronicity happens, and the things that come to us are responding to, like our signal to some degree. And the things just happen because we're like being truthful to ourselves as well as to other people. And it does, I think it does become a circumstance where, like when you both understand it's now, there is no tomorrow. And this is one of the things that I think about marriage is I can't promise something that I don't know, And so, like, I can't promise you I'm going to be here a year from now. I might get hit by a bus. I can't promise that I'm going to be there, because I can't. And so, like, just kind of understanding that reality means, I can't do that. All I can do is what I'm doing now, And so to me, it is much more about being in the now. But I think that also relates to a lot of the things that you're talking about when it comes to like having honest conversations, with your partner, with your loved ones. It does become, or that has that potential to be much more meaningful, so that like the level of commitment that you have to each other is built like much stronger. And I think that's also, kind of one of the things that we explore with Raising Excellence is this idea of we have more senses than we think. They're telling us we have 5 senses, and they're really kind of trying to remove those from us. But we might have 12 senses or 32 senses or something like that. I certainly have like a sense of balance. I have a sense of empathy. I have a sense of love. All these things, if I exercise them, if I create an awareness where I understand and practice those things, I get better at them. And a lot of these things, these other senses, are things that relate to other people, like empathy.
That's right.
And so, like, if we're not practicing these things, if we're not sensing these things, if we're not training ourselves and understanding what value they bring to us, then we're just like walking around blind.
All right, I'm going to play our outro music and halt the recording. Just not because I wish to terminate or influence the time we have in this discussion, but because I said something on the schedule and I put something in terms of that on the calendar, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay true to that format. But I hope you all just hang
Part
hang
2.
on for a
We're
moment.
looking forward to part 2.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Yeah.
that. Don. Go ahead, Don.
With all these little notes, and I got one of these done so far.
Wow. Wow. So, if you are available next week, because I can tell you, I haven't had a commitment from, I've reached out to a couple different people, actually, Lisa Arborcheski, who I promised her that once I got my podcast up and running, that she would be one of the first guests, but she's got a lot going on. And she's like, I'll get back to you on January 5th. And that's fine. And if you listen to this, Lisa, this podcast will be available to you, and you're always welcome to drop in at any time. Of course, I'm sure you know that, but I would just like to, officially say that in your direction. Hope you know that. And as a guest, but then we also schedule some time that fits in with your schedule. I also reached out to Nathan Ribble's mother. She is on the verge of launching a particular business model where she's going to be engaging with in regards to sexual therapy focused on men, primarily on men. And I
Wow.
thought that would be an interesting person to have in as a guest. And she's like, well, she said through her son, Nathan, I don't really know Lee that well. Maybe I'll check his podcast or things out and maybe then consider that in the future.
That's funny.
That.
I know him personally and I didn't know that.
Wow. I know, right? And like, he's like, oh, my mom. And then she introduced herself, talked about herself for a bit. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Interesting, right? And yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation here today, Don. And you seem to enjoy yourself very well. And it matters nothing to me that you didn't go to Harvard School of Medicine or this Swami or Guru at all. Doesn't matter to me in the slightest. That's one thing I really appreciate with the people I've come in contact through our autonomy program, that these are people who are living interesting lives, have lived interesting lives, are going to continue. I'm so convinced to have interesting lives and have things that they realize that they wish to share or impart or discuss with other people. And I think that's great. And I really enjoyed what you had to say. And I'd like to say, if next week is your thing, let's let this conversation continue into the next segment, episode 3.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone's comments and presence and everything. It's nice to have people listen.
All right. Outro music, go. I decided I'm not going to sing today. All right. All right. Thank you all for coming. And I say to you again, if you feel lost in something that you no longer appreciate in your life or what you're doing with your life or time on this earth, come home. Come back home to your human family. We miss you. The door's open, and it's a really good time. It's a really great time for you to come back home and join your human family.
One of us. One of us.